In 1897, a small crew of Louisiana loggers entered the Atchafalaya swamp to mark cypress for the mill. The work was supposed to be routine: cut a line, set camp, and get paid. But the deeper they went, the swamp fell unnaturally quiet. Strange tracks appeared in the mud. Something circled their tents after dark, moving with slow steps that matched no man or animal they knew. Within days, one of the loggers vanished. What happened next became a story that old families in Louisiana still refuse to tell. So before we continue, please make sure you leave a like and let us know where you're watching from. Thanks. I first saw the Atchafalaya swamp in the spring of 1897 from the deck of a low riverboat. Brown water spread out in all directions. Cypress trunks rose straight from it, gray and wet, with strips of moss hanging from the branches. Insects whined around my ears. The air was so damp my shirt clung to my back before we left the main river. There were 6 of us headed for the new camp. Harlan Dupree, the owner, sat at the bow with his boots on a crate and his hat over his eyes. His younger brother, Isaac, kept close to him, thin and pale, always rolling cigarettes with nervous fingers. Marcel Thibodeau, our guide, stood near the rail. He was broad in the chest, dark in the face from years in the sun, and he wore a small wooden cross on a cord around his neck. Baptiste leaned near the cargo, laughing at anything the boatman said. Henri, the cook, guarded the food and pots and shot doubtful looks at the trees. I stayed in the middle of the deck, one hand on a post, watching the place that would be home for the next months. I had cut pine in dry country and worked log drives on fast, cold rivers. I had never seen a forest growing out of water. The smell of wet bark and mud filled my nose. Now and then an alligator slid from a bank into the water with a low splash. Every sound from the boat seemed too loud. "You get used to it," Marcel said, eyes on the trees. "First days it feels heavy, then it feels normal. That is when men stop listening." "Listening for what?" I asked. He shook his head once. "Just listen. You will hear the difference between this place and the ones you knew." Harlan lifted his hat and glanced back at us. "Only difference I care about is these trunks," he said. "Tall, straight, fat. The mill in Baton Rouge will pay us well. We stay busy. We all do better than last season." Henri nodded at the mention of money. Isaac tried to smile but looked more tired than pleased. Marcel said nothing. His gaze stayed on the still water and the dark gaps between the trunks. We turned off the main channel into a narrow passage. Branches met over our heads and dimmed the light. The boatmen used a pole to push us away from roots and half-sunk logs. The air felt heavier. The usual noises of river life faded until I could only hear insects, frogs, and the dull knock of the pole on wood. Something large moved under the hull and scraped along the bottom. Isaac flinched and gripped the rail. "Fish, log, or gator," Baptiste said. "Plenty of each." Marcel spoke in a low voice. "Not only those." Harlan heard and snorted. "You wanted a guide," he told me. "They all come with stories. Keep your head on the work and you will be fine." No one answered that. A little later, the boat slid up to a rise of ground just high enough to hold a camp. Old stumps around the edge showed someone had used it before. The boatman helped us unload tools, food, canvas, and a few planks for platforms. Then he pushed off again without staying for supper. His shoulders looked stiff as he pulled away through the trees. When the sound of the paddle wheel faded, the swamp around us stayed very quiet. No distant wagons, no town dogs, only insects, frogs, and a slow drip of water. We built 2 low platforms for sleeping and raised canvas tents on them. Henri set up his stove and stirred a pot until the smell of beans and salt pork covered the swamp smell for a time. After we ate, Harlan spread a creased map on a crate. A lantern cast a yellow circle over it. "We start here," he said, tapping a square near the drawn river. "Tomorrow we cut a straight line east from camp. Baptiste, you mark it with blazes and flags. We spread out along that line and mark every good cypress. I want logs floating back toward town by the end of the week." "We only just landed," Isaac said. "The mill does not pay us to rest," Harlan answered. "We did not come all this way to sit by the fire." Isaac lowered his eyes. I saw him swallow, but he said nothing else. When Harlan walked off to check saws and axes, Marcel stepped closer. "You follow his line," he told us quietly. "But remember this. You stay on the flags. You do not wander. You hear someone call your name from the trees and you cannot see his face, you keep walking. You hear steps behind you that do not match any man in camp. You do not talk back. You understand?" Baptiste grinned. "You mean the stories? Wolves that stand upright?" Old curses in the bayou? My grandmother told those to scare us to bed. They were not stories to hers, Marcel said. Call it what you want. Rougarou, cursed man, beast. It walks where men think they are alone. It comes when a camp is new and men have not settled their noise into the place. Henri shook his head and crossed himself once. You talk that way, you bring it closer. Then stay quiet, Marcel said. Night came fast. The sky darkened behind the tree line and the clearing shrank to a ring of firelight. Humidity eased a little with the loss of sun, but the air never felt cool. Frogs called, alligators bellowed in the distance, and insects hummed around the lanterns. We checked the guy lines on the tents and crawled onto our cots. Inside, the canvas walls moved slightly when someone shifted. Baptiste's snore came in short, rough bursts. I lay awake listening. The sounds of the swamp blended into one steady background, and slowly my eyes began to close. I woke to a different kind of quiet. The frogs still called, but farther away. The insects seemed fewer. The fire outside had burned low, only a faint glow showed through the canvas. A light breeze moved across my face and carried in the smell of mud and sour fur. Then I heard footsteps. They came from the direction of the fire pit. Slow, heavy steps on soft ground. They did not hurry, they did not creep. They moved with steady weight. The steps stopped just outside the tent door. The canvas sagged inward near the top, with a clear bulge pressing from outside at a height where a hand or head would be. My mouth went dry. I reached for the knife at the side of my bedroll. "Who is that?" I whispered. The canvas stayed pressed for one long breath. Then the pressure eased. The footsteps moved away, circling the tent once, then fading toward the trees. Baptiste muttered and rolled over but did not wake. No one else stirred. I lay there listening until the sounds of frogs and insects grew loud again. Sleep stayed away. When dawn finally came, I felt hollow. Mist lay low over the clearing when we stepped outside. The fire pit was a dull ring of ash. The ground near the tent door showed only scuffed prints from the evening before. I walked the line where I had heard the steps, searching for clear marks, but saw nothing that proved or explained what had stood there. Marcel watched me from near the stove. "You heard something?" he said. "Footsteps," I answered. "Stopped right at the tent. Whatever it was, stood high." "You sure it was a man?" he asked. I thought of the height of the bulge in the canvas, the weight in the steps, the smell in the air. I could not say yes. "No," I said. "I am not sure." "Then do not give it a name," he said. "Names travel." After a quick meal, we loaded our gear and walked east from camp along the line Harlan wanted. Baptiste led with the axe and flagging cloth, nicking trunks and tying strips of red rag as he went. Isaac followed with the map and a small notebook. I walked beside Marcel. Harlan and Henri came behind, counting trunks and talking about saw teeth and pay scales. The ground rose and fell in low hummocks. Water filled the hollows between them. Our boots sank into mud and came up with a thick sound. The deeper we went, the less we heard the camp behind us. The air grew still and close. We had been walking less than an hour when Baptiste stopped so suddenly that Isaac nearly walked into him. "What is it?" Harlan called. "Tracks," Baptiste said. In front of us, in a stretch of bare mud between roots, a line of prints crossed the path. They were deep and clear. Each print showed a wide pad and 4 long toes. At the end of each toe, the mud rose in a sharp point where something hard had bitten in. The prints stepped from the reeds on one side of the path, crossed it in slow, even strides, and vanished into standing water on the other side. Henri stared and whispered a short prayer. Isaac's fingers tightened on the notebook until the pages bent. My skin prickled along my arms. "Wolves?" I asked. Marcel crouched, studied one print for a long breath, then stood. His jaw muscles worked once. "Wolves do not walk on 2 legs, he said. Harlan stepped over the tracks and shook his head. "Big dog or something," he said. "Maybe a wolf from farther north. It followed the dry ground, that is all." Marcel kept his eyes on the prints. "There are no wolves here that leave a mark like that," he said. "And look, one in front of the other, not 4 on the ground at once." "Bear then," Harlan said. "Whatever it is, it did not kill us in our sleep. We have work to do." Henri would not step across the line of tracks. He walked around through reeds and came back to the path on the other side. Isaac stood beside me, staring at the mud. "I have seen dog prints," Isaac said in a thin voice. "These are not dog prints." Harlan clapped him on the shoulder. "You have also seen our accounts. The mill paid late last season. We cannot go back with excuses about prints in the mud. Keep moving." We followed Baptiste deeper into the trees. He whistled under his breath at first, but after a while the tune died and he walked in silence. Marcel made a small mark on a tree every time we passed a split in the ground that could lead away. He did not speak much. Now and then he glanced back along the line of red flags as if counting them. The trunks grew thicker as we went. We marked cypress that rose straight from the shallow water, measuring their girth with a strip of canvas and making a note of the best ones. Every bark mark meant future work for saw and axe. The routine of it eased me for a time. My body took over and my mind settled into the tasks it knew. Around midday, the light shifted. Clouds moved across the sun and everything went a shade dimmer. The insects quieted for a few minutes, then started up again, but not as loud. An alligator slid off a low bank a short distance away, sending small ripples over the water. Then I heard a sound that did not match the rest. It was low and rough, almost under my hearing, like a growl held back in a throat. It came from ahead and to the left, beyond the flagged line. Baptiste paused mid-step. Henri stopped with his hands on his pack straps. Isaac turned in a slow circle, trying to find the source. "You hear that?" I asked. Marcel nodded once. Harlan cupped a hand around his ear. "Wild hog," he said. "Or gator." The growl came again, a little louder. It was longer this time, rising and falling in a way that raised the hair on my arms. It did not sound like any hog I had ever heard. It seemed to vibrate in my chest. "Could be," Marcel said, but his voice lacked conviction. "We move steady, not fast. Do not run. Do not separate." He moved to the front with Baptiste. We walked in a tighter group. For a few minutes, the growl did not return. A black bird flapped from a branch overhead and flew off through the branches. I breathed out slowly and tried to tell myself Harlan was right. The swamp held many animals. Most wanted nothing to do with us. A smell drifted across the path. It was strong and rank, like wet fur that had never dried, layered over with something faintly sour. It slid into my nose and stayed there. Henri covered his mouth with his hand. Isaac's eyes watered. "Dead thing," Harlan muttered. "Rot somewhere." "No rot," Marcel said softly. "Fresh." We did not see the source. The smell faded as we walked and the sounds of the swamp crept back in. Eventually, the light brightened as the clouds thinned. Harlan called for a halt and we found a raised patch of ground to eat on. Henri laid out bread and cold pork. Baptiste drank from his canteen and wiped his mouth with the back of his hand. "You see," he said, "we are still here. I will take a hog over last season's ice storms any day." "You were not the one with frostbite," I answered. He grinned, but it faded when he saw Isaac's face. Isaac held his food without eating it. His gaze kept flicking toward the trees. "You shake like that, you will scare the game away," Baptiste said, trying to turn it into a joke. Isaac looked at him. "There is nothing out there that needs me to warn it," he said quietly. "It already knows we are here." Henri crossed himself again. "Do not talk like that," he said. "You put bad words into the air." Marcel chewed slowly, watching each of us. "My uncle worked a camp downriver when I was a boy," he said after a moment. "They found prints around their fires one morning, big, like these. Men laughed, said it was tricks. They stayed. A week later, one of them went missing from the latrine. No sound, no struggle, just gone. They packed the camp in 3 days and left half their tools behind." "Stories," Harlan said. "Told to keep men from wandering drunk. We are not drunks. We are not fools. And we do not have a week to waste." Marcel met his eyes. "You brought me here to guide you," he said. "I am guiding you. Respect this place or it will remind you why men left it alone so long." A silence followed. The only sounds were chewing and the faint drip of water. I saw a tremor in Isaac's hand. Baptiste picked at a splinter in his palm. Harlan folded the map with more force than needed and shoved it back into his vest. We moved on after the meal. The air felt heavier again, not from heat this time, but from something I could not name. I stayed close to Marcel. His presence steadied me. At one point, the flagged line crossed a patch of ground that dipped down into dark water on both sides. The surface was almost still, with only thin bits of plant matter floating on it. Baptiste hesitated, then stepped off the line to skirt a thicker patch of mud. "Stay on the flags," Marcel called. "It is only a step around," Baptiste answered without looking back. I can see the line from here. He took another few steps away, weaving between some low saplings and a leaning trunk. The rest of us waited, following him with our eyes. I heard his boots squish in the wet ground, then a sudden splash, then nothing. "Baptiste?" I called. No answer. I heard my own breath, loud in my ears. Isaac's boots shuffled on the path. "Quit fooling," Harlan said. "We have no time for that." He stepped forward, pushing through the saplings. I went behind him with Marcel. Henri and Isaac stayed on the flagged line. We reached the place where we had last seen Baptiste. The mud was churned a little, but there was no sign of him in the water. No hat, no pack, no floating shape. The water showed only our reflections, broken by a few small ripples that faded as we watched. "Baptiste!" Harlan shouted. "Answer me, boy!" Something moved in the trees ahead, deeper in the swamp. I saw a dark shape between two trunks for just a heartbeat. It was taller than a man, narrow at the waist, broad at the shoulders. 2 points of dull red light stood out where the head should be. They held still for a long second, then blinked out as the shape shifted and slipped behind a cypress. Marcel grabbed my arm. "Back," he said. "You saw that," I whispered. He nodded once. "Back to the flags, now." Harlan stared into the gap where the shape had vanished. His face had gone pale under his beard. He did not speak for a beat, then turned and shoved us toward the marked path. Henri called out as we broke through the saplings. "Where is he? Do you see him?" "No," Harlan said. His voice had lost some of its usual weight. "He must have gone around the other way. He will meet us back on the line." "We would have seen him," Isaac said. "There is nowhere here to hide." "We keep moving," Harlan said. "We shout every 100 steps. If he went off alone and got turned around, he will hear us." We walked on. Every so often Harlan or Marcel called Baptiste's name. No answer came back, only bird calls and the distant grunt of an animal. The silence from behind us grew heavier with each unanswered shout. By late afternoon, Harlan gave the order to turn back. "We have enough trees marked," he said, though his earlier greed had not been satisfied. "We cannot stay out past dark, not with someone missing." The walk back toward camp felt longer than the walk out. The flagged line that had looked like a simple tool in the morning now felt like the only safe path through a place that watched us. The smell we had noticed earlier faded in and out with the wind, as if something moved along with us at a distance. When we broke into the clearing at last, I expected to feel relief. Instead, my stomach tightened. The camp did not look the way we had left it. The canvas on one of the tents hung partly torn from its stakes, flapping in the light breeze. The crate of food that Henri guarded so closely sat open, its lid on the ground and several sacks dragged out. One sack of flour lay ripped apart, white powder scattered over the trampled dirt. A pot lay overturned near the fire pit. Scratches scored the side of the largest tent in long, ragged lines, high off the ground, as if something standing upright had dragged claws across it. Henri stared at the scattered food. His lips moved without sound. Isaac's throat worked as he swallowed. "Bears," Harlan said at once, but his voice wavered. "Must have come through while we were gone. Smelled the pork." Marcel walked to the edge of the clearing and crouched. "Bears do not leave these," he said. In the soft ground near the fire pit, clear in the spilled flour, a set of prints showed the same wide pads and long toes we had seen on the trail. They circled the tents and food crates, then led off toward the trees again. I looked at the flour-covered tracks and thought of the footsteps outside the tent on the first night, the pressed canvas, the smell in the air, and the shape in the trees that afternoon. A cold feeling spread through my chest. Baptiste was still missing. The camp was no longer untouched. Whatever walked with those prints knew exactly where we slept and where we kept our food. For a moment, none of us spoke. I realized I already believed Marcel's warning more than Harlan's reasons, and that shift in my own mind scared me almost as much as the prints themselves. We cleaned what we could before the light failed. The flour that had spilled soaked into the damp dirt, turning into a pale paste that clung to our boots. We saved the unspoiled food, tied down the torn canvas, and checked the tents for anything else disturbed. Nothing was missing except the comfort we once had that this clearing belonged to us. Henri kept glancing toward the tree line while stirring a pot of thin stew. His hand shook every time he picked up the ladle. Isaac helped him in silence. Harlan paced between the tents, mumbling about tools and schedules, though he did not raise his voice. Marcel stood near the fire pit, arms folded, eyes fixed on the dark. "We will take watches tonight," Harlan finally said. "2 at a time. No one leaves the clearing. At first light, we resume looking for Baptiste." Marcel shook his head. "If he lives, he will not be found by walking blind into that swamp," he said. "We call for him from camp. We listen. If he does not answer by tomorrow, he will not answer." "You do not know that," Isaac whispered. His voice broke halfway through the sentence. "I do," Marcel said. Harlan's jaw clenched. "Enough," he said. "We will call. We will watch. We will return with him or with proof of what happened. A logging crew does not run from animals." Marcel did not argue, but he did not agree either. He turned away and crouched to check the edge of the fire. His face looked drawn in the orange light. Dinner tasted of mud and smoke. My hands trembled around the tin bowl. Every small noise from the trees made my shoulders tighten. When night closed in, it felt like a wall settling around the clearing, leaving only the fire to hold it back. I took first watch with Marcel. We sat near the fire with rifles across our knees. The flames crackled and sent sparks upward, but the light barely reached the first row of cypress trunks. Beyond that lay only darkness that moved when the wind rustled leaves. Isaac and Henri crawled into the nearest tent. I heard them whispering at first, then nothing. Harlan stretched out on a cot under the open sky, arms folded over his chest, boots still on. He said he wanted to be close enough to the fire to answer any calls from the swamp, but I suspected he feared the tents. After an hour of silence, I cleared my throat quietly. "You think he is gone?" I said. Marcel did not react for a few seconds. "I think he is beyond our help," he said. "The swamp takes who it takes." "You think the thing with those prints took him?" "Yes." "Is it a man?" I asked. "Or a beast?" He breathed out slowly. "There were men once," he said. "Some say they broke certain rules and were changed. Some say it was no choice. A creature that hunts in the dark can be born from curses, sickness, or the land itself. I do not know which story is true, but I have seen enough to know no man walks on 2 legs with feet like that and leaves no sound behind except when he wants to." I looked at the tracks again in my memory, the long toes, the sharp points where claws pressed down. "And the eyes," I said, "in the trees." He nodded. "Those too." The fire crackled. A gust of wind carried smoke sideways. A frog croaked somewhere far off. "You could have told us more," I said. "You would not have believed more," he answered. "Would you have refused the job? Would Harlan have listened? You all think you can carve this place to your will. The swamp does not bend unless it wants to." I had no answer. He was right. If he had told me everything at the dock, I would have brushed it off as superstition. Now the dark beyond the fire felt like a mouth waiting to close. The second hour passed. My eyelids grew heavy, and I blinked them open again. I stood to stretch my legs and walked a few paces around the fire. That was when I heard it, a faint splash. Not close, but not distant either. A single footstep in shallow water. Then another, slow, measured. I raised my rifle. Marcel rose beside me, lifting his own. "Where?" he whispered. "There," I said, pointing toward a gap between 2 trees. We waited. The fire hissed behind us. My pulse thudded in my throat. Then came a low grunt. It sounded like breath forced through a throat narrow with hunger or anger. Leaves shifted. Something brushed against reeds, heavy enough to bend them, careful enough not to break them. Isaac stirred inside the tent. "Is someone out there?" he called weakly. Marcel shot him a sharp look and motioned for silence. Something moved at the edge of the clearing, only the shape of a darker patch against dark trunks, no details. The air filled with that same sour fur smell from earlier, stronger now. I held my breath. The shape leaned forward and 2 faint red points lit up, floating at the height of a standing man's head. My grip tightened on the rifle. The creature did not step into the firelight. It stood just outside it, watching. "Do not fire," Marcel whispered. "If you miss, it will come fast." "It already knows we are here," I whispered back. "Yes," he said, "but it has not chosen yet." I wanted to ask what choosing meant, but the words stuck in my throat. The shape shifted again. A low, steady growl bled into the clearing, vibrating through my chest. My mind told me to run. My legs stayed frozen. Then the creature turned away, slowly, as if unwilling to break the moment, and walked back into the trees. Its steps were heavy for the first few paces, then silent. We waited until we could no longer smell it. Only then did Marcel lower his rifle and exhale. Isaac crawled out of the tent, shaking. "Was that it?" he asked. "Was that the thing that took Baptiste?" "Yes," Marcel said. "It was." Harlan sat up but did not rise. His hands trembled slightly where they rested on his knees. "We have guns," he said. "We have a fire. We will not be stalked like animals." Marcel looked at him without answering. The rest of the night passed in slow stretches. Every rustle made my pulse jump. No one slept well. When dawn came, gray and damp, the clearing felt smaller than before. We ate in silence. No one mentioned the stew from the night before. When the first thin shafts of light reached the ground, Harlan stood and tried to regain his old authority. "We are not running," he said. "We find Baptiste. We secure the camp. When the supply boat returns, we send word. Until then, we stay sharp." Henri rubbed his face. "You want us to go back out there," he said, "after what we saw last night?" "We go together," Harlan said. "No wandering, no separating." Isaac swallowed. "If we go back out, it will follow us." "It already follows us," Marcel said. "But staying here does not make us safe either. It knows this clearing now." I felt a weight settle behind my ribs. Leaving the clearing meant stepping into the swamp again where everything watched us. Staying meant waiting for the creature to circle closer until it decided to enter the light. Harlan started packing tools before anyone could answer. He spoke louder, trying to fill the air with purpose. "We keep to the flagged line," he said. "We call for Baptiste every few steps." But when we checked the flagged path, something new waited for us. 3 flags were gone. The cloth ties had been ripped from the bark and left on the ground in torn strips. Mud was scuffed across the path in fresh streaks, and in the soft dirt near a root, a single set of prints pointed straight toward camp. "What does that mean?" Isaac asked, voice cracking. "It means it walked right up to our path," I said, "and it wanted us to know it." Marcel crouched again, studying the ground. His face tightened. "These are from last night, same weight, same stride. It was here while we slept." Harlan stepped back from the prints. For the first time since I met him, he had no answer. I realized then that we had crossed into a place where our work no longer controlled the days. The swamp set the terms now. The creature understood our movements. It removed our markers. It circled our tents. It came when it pleased and left when it pleased, and Baptiste had vanished without leaving a trace except the churned mud where we last saw him. "We stay together," Marcel said at last. "No lines, no wandering. If anyone hears a voice calling from the trees, you ignore it. If anyone sees something move, you say so. We walk a slow circle around camp, no farther." Harlan opened his mouth, but Marcel cut him off. "You hired me," he said. "Now you listen." Harlan shut his mouth. We began our cautious circle. The swamp that had felt distant now pressed close. Every splash in the water made Isaac jerk. Henri muttered short prayers under his breath. Harlan held his axe so tightly his knuckles turned white. I kept my eyes moving. The cypress shadows shifted as light filtered through the branches. I searched for the creature's outline. Every shape looked ready to step forward. Halfway around the circle, a low sound drifted toward us. Not a growl, not steps, a voice. "Help," it said. Isaac stiffened. "That is Baptiste," he whispered. "No," Marcel said sharply. "Do not listen." "Help," the voice repeated. Same tone, same volume. No pain, no fear, just a plain request carried on damp air. Isaac took a step forward. Marcel grabbed his arm. "That is not him," Marcel said. "It is close, but not him." Isaac's face twisted. "You do not know that." "Yes," Marcel said. "I do." But the voice came again, this time from farther left. "Help." Harlan swallowed hard. "It wants us to move," he said. At that moment, I understood something I had only half believed before. Whatever hunted us did not strike out of blind rage. It tested us. It watched how we reacted. It wanted to draw us off the path we set for ourselves. And so far, it was succeeding. The voice called again, softer this time. We froze. Even the swamp quieted, as if waiting for our next step. Only the slight breeze stirred the reeds. That was when I realized the voice was drifting, not from one spot but shifting across the water. never rising or falling in urgency. It repeated the same word with the same tone, no pauses for breath, no human weakness in it. Marcel let go of Isaac's arm. We returned to camp, now, quiet and steady. Isaac shook with indecision but did not resist. We backed away, keeping our eyes on the trees. The voice did not follow this time. It faded as we walked, replaced by frogs and insects again. The moment we stepped back into the clearing, Isaac sank to the ground and covered his face with both hands. "It sounded like him," Isaac whispered. "It sounded exactly like him." "That is what it wanted," Marcel said. Henri spoke barely above a breath. "If Baptiste is alive—" "He is not," Marcel said. "What took him does not leave men alive." The words hung there without challenge. Even Harlan did not argue. Afternoons settled over the swamp in thick heat. We tried to rest. No one succeeded. Every mind circled the same thought. We had seen the creature, it had seen us, and it was not done. As the sun lowered, the shadows stretched long across the clearing. I felt the edge of night approaching, and with it the weight of another long watch. I wondered how many nights we had left. By the time the sun slid behind the cypress line, the air had cooled only slightly. The light thinned until the clearing became a dull, uneven circle that barely held back the edges of the swamp. We rebuilt the fire higher than the previous night. Its glow reached the first trunks but did little to ease the tight feeling in my chest. No one spoke of sleep. We all knew we would lie awake even if we tried. Marcel assigned watches again, pairing himself with whoever looked closest to breaking. Isaac stayed close to the fire and held his rifle across his lap with both hands. His shirt clung to his back. Henri moved from pot to crate and back again, busy with nothing. Harlan sat on a stump, silent for the first time since I had met him, the map still tucked in his vest but ignored. I took second watch with Isaac. Marcel said it would be good for him to have someone calm next to him, though I did not feel especially calm. While the first watch settled in near the tree line, I lay on my cot and stared at the canvas roof of the tent, waiting for my turn. Sleep never came. When Marcel tapped my shoulder, the sky had gone fully dark. I stepped out of the tent with Isaac following close behind. The fire crackled and threw shifting patterns of orange across his face. His eyes were wide and unfocused. He moved stiffly, as if any quick motion might draw something out of the shadows. We sat across from each other with the fire between us. The swamp settled into its night sounds. Frogs, chirping insects, the slow drip of water. For a few minutes, nothing else stirred. "You think Baptiste suffered?" Isaac asked suddenly. His voice was soft and strained. "I do not know," I said. "It happened fast when he went missing." "I heard him," Isaac said. "I know it was not him, but I heard his voice." "It used what we knew about him," I answered. "It used his voice the way hunters use bait." Isaac stared at the flames. "I used to look up to Harlan," he said. "He always had answers. Now he looks at the trees the way I do." "Harlan wants to believe men control the world," I said, "but the world is bigger than that." Isaac nodded and rubbed his forehead. "I cannot think straight," he whispered. "Every sound makes me jump. I keep seeing those prints in the flower." He paused, then he looked up sharply. "You hear that?" he asked. I listened. At first, all I caught was the steady crackle of burning wood. Then, faint and low, I heard another sound. Something shifting in the brush a few yards outside the fire's reach. "Stay still," I said. We watched the dark. The movement paused. For a stretch of seconds, nothing. Then a soft step sounded, measured and slow. Another step followed, heavier this time, as if the creature wanted us to hear it. Isaac's breathing quickened. The brush parted slightly, and a shape leaned forward just enough to be seen. Not fully. Just the outline of a tall form, arms too long, head held slightly forward, shoulders hunched as if ready to advance. Two faint points of red glowed in the dark where its eyes fixed on us. Isaac gasped and raised his rifle. "Do not shoot," I said quickly. "It's testing us." "It already knows where we are," Isaac whispered. "If it comes closer, I fire." The creature did not step closer. It held perfectly still. Only the slow rise and fall of its upper chest betrayed breath. The sound of it, thick, steady, unhurried, carried to us. A long moment passed, then another. Finally, it backed away, fading behind the brush without turning. The eyes lingered until the last possible second before disappearing completely. Isaac lowered the rifle, shaking hard. Sweat ran down the side of his face. "It is watching to see who breaks first," he whispered. "Then we cannot break," I said, though my own resolve shook with the weight of the words. We sat in silence after that. The swamp resumed its usual rhythm. Isaac wiped his forehead again and tried to steady his breathing. A few minutes later, Marcel and Harlan returned from their walk along the clearing's edge. Marcel glanced at our faces and understood. "You saw it," he said quietly. "Yes," I answered. Harlan stared into the dark behind us. "It wants us frightened," he said. "It has what it wants," Marcel answered. "Fear makes men make mistakes." Night dragged on. At one point, Isaac lay back on the ground, clutching his rifle to his chest. His eyes stayed open. He did not sleep. Near midnight, a sharp sound broke the steady noises of the swamp, a crack from somewhere beyond the clearing, a branch snapping under weight. Marcel, now on watch again, stood instantly and motioned for quiet. We froze, listening. Another snap. Closer. Then silence. Harlan rose from his cot, gripping his axe. The firelight reflected off the blade. Henri crawled from his tent and held a pot lid in one hand as if that might help him somehow. I strained my ears for the next sound. Instead, a low growl rolled through the clearing, deeper than the one we had heard before. It carried anger this time, and hunger. "It is inside the trees," Marcel whispered. "Not far." "Is it circling us?" Isaac asked. "It circles most things," Marcel said, "but this circle is tightening." The growl came again, this time from a different point in the trees, as if the creature had moved quickly and silently around the camp. A crack sounded behind us. A splash followed at the water's edge. The thing moved without pattern, fast and fluid. Harlan planted his boots firmly. "It wants to scare us," he said. "We cannot let it." "Scare us into what?" Henri asked. "Running," Marcel said. "If we run, it chooses one of us." I gripped my rifle tighter. Isaac stood again, though his legs shook. Henri muttered a short prayer. Harlan lifted his axe. Marcel watched the trees without blinking. Then the growl stopped, all at once, as if something had clamped it off. The swamp held its breath. A new sound crept in, soft, slow, almost delicate. Footsteps, human-sounding at first, one after another, approaching from the west side of the clearing. "Baptiste?" Isaac whispered, hope and dread mixed in his voice. "No," Marcel said firmly. "Do not say his name again." The footsteps came closer. Then they stopped at the tree line. A moment passed. Something stepped into view. It was not the creature, not the full shape we feared. Instead, a single hand reached forward into the firelight. A human hand, mud across the knuckles, dark streaks on the palm. Fingers unnaturally stiff, as if forced to move. Then the hand withdrew. Isaac lurched forward before anyone could stop him. "Isaac!" I called, grabbing his arm, but he shook free and staggered toward the edge of the clearing. "Baptiste!" Isaac shouted. His voice cracked. "If that is you, answer me!" He took another step. Then something snapped loudly in the brush, like a body shifting weight. Marcel lunged and pulled Isaac backward just as a shadow leaned out from behind a cypress. Not the whole shape, just a piece of it. An elongated snout, fur matted and dark, jaws slightly open. Red eyes stared straight at Isaac, unblinking. Isaac froze. His breath caught in his throat. The creature's jaws opened wider. A low, controlled sound rumbled from it, shorter than a growl, but more deliberate, a warning. Marcel dragged Isaac back until they both stumbled into the dirt near the fire. The creature disappeared again, stepping back into the dark without a sound. Isaac curled in on himself, gripping his own elbows. His teeth chattered, though the night was warm. Marcel knelt beside him. "Do not look toward the trees again," he said. "Not tonight." Isaac nodded weakly. The rest of the night passed without another sight of the creature, but none of us slept. We sat or paced or crouched near the fire, listening to every shift of wind, every flap of a bird wing, every ripple of water. When dawn came, none of us looked at each other with relief. We only felt the exhaustion of surviving another night. Henri stirred a pot of weak coffee. Isaac drank his without tasting it. Harlan stared at the prints still visible in the dirt, his jaw tight. "We cannot stay," I said. The words came out without planning. They were simply true. Henri nodded immediately. Isaac said nothing, his eyes still unfocused. Marcel watched Harlan. Harlan finally spoke. If we leave, we lose the contract. The season ends before we get another chance. If we stay, Marcel said, one of us dies next. Harlan looked at each of us, then at the tracks again. His shoulders slumped and he let out a long breath. We pack at noon, he said. We wait until the light is highest, and then we head for the river. None of us argued. But the creature had not waited for noon. It had its own plans. We broke camp in a strained silence, each of us moving with the tight focus of men who knew they were being hunted. The damp air clung to our skin. The ground around the clearing still held the prints we had studied through the night, reminders that whatever watched us walked closer than our own shadows. Henri packed the cookware without humming as he usually did. Isaac fumbled with the rope ties on the supply crate until Marcel gently took them from his hands and finished the knots himself. Harlan tried to bark orders, but his voice held no force. Every time a twig snapped, he flinched. By the time we had the gear stacked near the edge of camp, the sun had climbed just high enough to filter light through the branches. It felt thin and weak, like daylight that barely pushed back the night. We drank the last of Henri's coffee and waited for the right moment to leave. Once we start, we do not stop, Marcel said. We walk the straightest line toward the river. No detours, no shouting. If someone collapses, 2 men lift him. Isaac swallowed. And if it follows us? It will follow us, Marcel said. But we do not give it a chance to choose its moment. Harlan hefted his axe and slung his pack over one shoulder. We move on my count, he said, trying to reclaim his authority. 1, 2. A sharp cry cut through his words. It came from somewhere behind the torn tent we had repaired the night before. Not a human voice. Not the creature's growl either, something in between. A short sound, loud and clipped, as if forced out by anger or pain. Henri froze with a sack in his arms. Isaac dropped his canteen. I felt a cold shock run up my spine. Marcel stepped in front of us, rifle raised. It waits for us to make mistakes, he said. Do not move from this circle. Harlan ignored him and strode toward the far side of the clearing. We cannot leave blind, he said. If something is in our camp, we clear it out. Harlan, I warned. Do not go alone. He did not stop. He pushed aside the fallen canvas and stepped behind the tent. Marcel cursed under his breath and followed him. I waited with Isaac and Henri. The air thickened. Even the insects quieted. The silence stretched so thin it felt close to breaking. Harlan? Henri called. No answer. Then a second cry ripped through the clearing, louder than the first, closer, sharp enough to shake me out of stillness. Stay here, I said to Isaac and Henri. Do not move. I ran toward the back of the tent with my rifle ready. The ground was torn up with scuffed dirt. A broken tent pole lay on the ground. I found Marcel first, standing rigid with his rifle raised, eyes fixed on something in the trees ahead. Harlan? I asked. Marcel did not look at me. It took him, he said quietly. My breath caught. You saw it? No, he said. But look. I followed his gaze. 20 yards away, in a narrow gap between cypress trunks, I saw a smear of red on the bark, fresh, thick. Something had been dragged through. The ground beneath the trees bore deep grooves, 2 long furrows like marks made by heels or boots pulled through mud. Harlan, I whispered. A low sound drifted through the trees, not a growl. A slow exhale of breath that carried weight and intent. It came from farther in the swamp, fading, then rising again. I could not tell if it came from one creature or echoed off the trunks. Marcel stepped back. We leave now, he said. If we stay another minute, one of us joins him. I wanted to look for Harlan, but there was no trail to follow beyond that smear of blood. No broken branches, no dropped axe, just the heavy pull marks vanishing into a wall of trees. Henri and Isaac hurried toward us as we re-entered the clearing. Isaac looked from our faces to the gap in the trees, and his mouth trembled. Where is he? Isaac asked. Gone hung in the air as clearly as if Marcel had said it. Isaac backed away, shaking his head hard. No, we cannot leave him. We cannot save him, Marcel said. The swamp already chose him. Isaac covered his face with both hands. Henri whispered a short prayer. We move, Marcel said. Every second we stay is another chance for it to take one of us. I grabbed my pack. Isaac hesitated until I touched his shoulder and guided him forward. He followed, trembling but moving. We left the clearing in a tight group, rifles drawn, packs shifting lightly on our backs. The path we had marked earlier was ruined, flags torn down, bark gouged, mud streaked in strange patterns. The swamp greeted us with a low rustling in the reeds. We pushed forward anyway. Every sound felt like a message, a splash of water behind us, a shift of brush to the right, a quiet grunt far to the left. The creature did not hide its presence now. It moved where we could hear it, not close enough to see, not far enough to forget. The sun climbed, but the swamp remained dim. Branches grew tighter overhead. Shadows pooled in the low spots along our route. "Do not look back," Marcel said as we walked. "It wants your eyes behind you." I tried to obey. My neck still tensed every time the brush rustled behind me. At one narrow stretch, the water rose almost to our knees. We stepped through thick muck that sucked at our boots and slowed our pace. Henri slipped once and nearly fell. Isaac caught him under the arm and hauled him upright. "Thank you," Henri whispered, breath shaky. Isaac nodded without speaking. Behind us, a heavy splash sounded, closer than before. Something large stepping into the same water we had just crossed. "Faster," Marcel said. "Do not break formation." We lengthened our steps as much as the muck allowed. My heart hammered against my ribs. The splashing behind us grew louder for a moment, then stopped completely. Silence again. That was worse. The quiet pressed so hard against my ears that even my own breathing seemed too loud. "We are close to the deeper channel," Marcel said. "Once we reach it, the river path is not far." "How close?" Henri asked. "Close," Marcel answered. Another splash, this time not behind us. Ahead. We froze. "Move back," Marcel ordered. Before we could take more than a step, reeds parted in front of us. A tall shape leaned out just enough to show its outline. Broad shoulders, hunched posture, fur clinging in wet strands. The red eyes glowed faintly in the shaded light. The creature did not step fully into view. It blocked the path by standing just off the center of it, as if daring us to move forward. Isaac gasped and stumbled into me. I steadied him with one hand while raising my rifle. Marcel stepped between us. "Do not shoot," he said. "Not unless it comes at us." "It is already at us," Henri whispered. The creature breathed slowly, deeply. I could see its chest rise and fall, its head tilted slightly, studying us. We moved backward one cautious step. The creature moved with us. One slow step forward. We stopped. It stopped. A deliberate rhythm, a measured control. "It is hurting us," I said quietly. Marcel nodded. "It wants us to turn." "If we turn," Isaac said, "it drives us back to camp." "It knows we want the river," Marcel said. "It wants us nowhere near the river." The creature lifted its head slightly. A low growl rolled from it, controlled and quiet but carrying enormous weight. Henri dropped to his knees, whispering prayers. Isaac's eyes filled with panic. "We cannot go forward," Isaac said. "We cannot go back." "There is no choice in this place," Marcel said. "Only paths that cost less." He slowly pointed to a narrow break in the trees off the main path, a route filled with thick muck and tangled roots. "We go there," he said. "That leads deeper," I said. "Yes," Marcel answered, "but it leads away from its path. It expects us to run for the river, so we do not." We moved toward the break in the trees. The creature watched. It did not follow immediately. It held its ground until we were nearly out of sight. Then, from behind us, brush snapped. Heavy steps followed. "It is coming," Isaac said. "Then keep moving," Marcel said, pulling him forward. "Do not stop. Do not fall." We pushed through tighter growth, stepping over roots and fallen branches, forcing our way into a deeper, darker part of the swamp. The sound of the creature's movement stayed behind us, steady, deliberate, never rushing. It wanted us afraid, but not dead, not yet. Isaac stopped suddenly and grabbed my arm. "What if it is driving us deeper because that is where it kills us?" he asked. Marcel looked back at us. His face was grim. "That is possible," he said. "But if we stay on its chosen path, the end is certain." The creature's steps grew louder. We pressed onward. No one spoke again for a long stretch. The swamp swallowed all sound except our own ragged breaths and the creature's slow pursuit. It chose not to attack yet. That scared me more than anything. A hunter that waits always knows exactly when it plans to strike. And it was bringing us to that moment, one controlled pace at a time. We reached a patch of higher ground dotted with cypress knees and thick ferns. The deeper path Marcel had chosen forced us into a tight line. Mud clung to our boots and the humidity felt stronger here, as if the air pressed down on our lungs. The creature's steps behind us changed. They grew lighter, as though it no longer needed to hide its weight. It walked with the ease of something certain of its control. Each sound landed at a steady pace, unhurried, closer than before but never rushing. It wanted us to feel it closing in. "We do not run," Marcel said quietly, though fear edged his voice now. "Running makes us prey." Henri's breath was ragged. "I cannot do this," he whispered. "You can," Marcel said. "You walk. That is all you do. You just walk." Isaac stumbled on a root. I caught him by the arm and held him upright. His skin was clammy. He swayed as though the fear itself was tiring his legs. We moved forward again. The trees grew so dense that the light dimmed further. Branches forced us to duck. At one point, my pack snagged on a low limb and I had to wrench myself free. Every delay felt like a small death. A low rumble came from behind us, a breath or another warning. The creature was close enough that its sound touched the back of my neck. "Do not look," Marcel said without turning his head. "If you look, you freeze." "I can hear it breathing," Isaac said shakily. "It breathes so you hear it," Marcel replied. "It wants your fear to guide your steps." We came upon a narrow rise of ground that overlooked a stagnant pool. The water was dark and unmoving. Long strands of plant matter floated on its surface. The smell coming off it was thick and sour. "We go around," Marcel said, scanning both sides. But before we could move, the reeds ahead shifted. Slowly, intentionally. Something stepped into the open, just enough for us to see it. A tall silhouette, nearly as high as the lower branches. Shoulders hunched, head angled forward, arms long enough to reach mid-thigh. The fur on its chest was wet and tangled. It stood with its legs slightly bent, not in a stance of fear but readiness. It had circled ahead of us. Isaac's legs gave out. He fell to the ground, shaking uncontrollably. Henri let out a choked sound and backed into me. Marcel raised his rifle but did not aim. "Do not provoke it," he said. "Just stay still." The creature stared at us. Its eyes glowed with a steady red that did not flicker or shift. Its breath came in long, heavy pulls. Each exhale carried that sour fur smell that made my stomach twist. It took one step forward. Behind us, another heavy step sounded, then another. Marcel's jaw tightened. "There is only one," he whispered. "It is moving fast, that is all." But his eyes betrayed uncertainty. I realized then that whether there was one or many did not matter. One was enough. The creature ahead took a second step and let out a faint grunt. Low, deep, and controlled. A warning to go nowhere. Henri fell to his knees and clasped his hands, praying under his breath. Isaac lay curled on the ground, gripping fistfuls of dirt. Marcel stepped forward just enough to shield them. "It does not want all of us," he said. "It wants one." His eyes flicked between us, not accusing but calculating. "It drives its prey until the weakest breaks. That is the one it takes. If we protect that person, it chooses again. It keeps choosing until someone is undefended." I stared at Isaac. He was shaking so hard his jaw clicked. "No," I whispered. "It cannot have him." "It already marked him," Marcel said. "You saw how it looked at him last night. It wants him." Isaac heard us. He lifted his head, tears streaking his mud-stained face. "Please," he whispered. "Do not let it take me." The creature answered him with another low rumble, as if confirming Marcel's words. Marcel lowered his rifle slightly. "If we fight," he said, "we all die. If we run, it pulls one of us down from behind. If we stand still, it takes the one it already chose." Isaac's breathing turned frantic. Henri gripped my sleeve with one trembling hand. "We cannot just give him up," he whispered. "I am not giving him up," Marcel said, "but I cannot stop it alone." The creature stepped closer. Its claws sank into the mud with deliberate weight. The slow approach held more terror than a charge. It wanted us to watch. It wanted us to understand its control over the moment. Isaac clawed at the ground, trying to crawl backwards. His heels slipped into the stagnant pool. The water rippled outward in a wide, quiet circle. The creature's head lifted slightly. It had made its choice. Isaac sobbed. "Help me," he begged, voice breaking apart. I stepped toward him without thinking. Marcel grabbed my shoulder. "If you go to him now," he said, "it takes you both." "I do not care," I said. "I will not watch this." Marcel held my eyes. "If you die, the others die. It will not stop at him." The creature tensed. A tight, terrifying silence fell. Then, in an instant, it moved. It crossed the distance so fast my mind barely registered the motion. One moment it stood before us. The next it was upon Isaac. It wrapped one long arm around his midsection, not slashing, not tearing, capturing. Isaac screamed once, a short, sharp sound that cut through the swamp and echoed off the trunks. I raised my rifle and fired without aiming. The shot cracked through the trees. The creature jerked but did not release Isaac. It shifted its weight, gripped him tighter, and pulled him toward the brush with a strength no man could match. "Shoot again!" I shouted. Marcel fired twice. Henri fired once with shaking hands. The creature flinched but did not fall. It dragged Isaac into the reeds, each step impossibly fast. Isaac's screams faded into the swamp, then stopped. The reeds stilled. The swamp fell quiet except for our ragged breaths. I lowered my rifle. My hands shook so badly I nearly dropped it. Henri collapsed onto the ground. Marcel stood frozen, eyes locked on the place where Isaac had disappeared. A long minute passed before he spoke. "It took him alive," he said. "That is its way." I clenched my jaw. "Then we go after him." "No," Marcel said firmly. "He is gone. If we chase it, it kills all of us. We have to make it to the river." Henri wiped his face. "I cannot walk," he whispered. "Yes, you can," Marcel said, "because walking is the only thing left between us and death." We forced ourselves forward, away from the stagnant pool, deeper into the trees that now felt tighter and more hostile. Every few steps, I looked back, but nothing moved behind us. The creature had taken what it wanted, and now the swamp waited to see if it would take more. We walked for nearly an hour, stumbling through mud and thick growth. My legs ached, my throat burned. Henri leaned heavily on me, and Marcel moved ahead, clearing branches when needed. At last, a thin ribbon of clearer light appeared between the trees. The river. Relief washed through me so sharply I nearly fell to my knees. We pushed toward it, faster now, desperate to break free of the swamp's grasp. The hum of insects grew louder, the ground firm beneath us. The trees spread out, letting more light in. "We made it," Henri said weakly. "Father above, we made it." Marcel did not smile. He scanned the tree line. "Not yet." We reached the muddy bank of the river. The water flowed slow but steady. Our supply boat was not due for days, but there were fallen logs we could tie together to make a raft. We had hope again. Then a sound cut through the hope. A long, deep howl rose from the swamp behind us. Not a wolf's howl, not an animal's cry. A call of triumph, a declaration. The creature knew exactly where we stood. Henri gripped my arm. "It followed us." "No," Marcel said. "It herded us. This is where it wants us." I stared at him. "Why here?" Before he could answer, brush snapped violently behind us. The creature stepped into view at the edge of the trees, not rushing this time, not testing, advancing. Henri screamed. Marcel raised his rifle. I lifted mine, ready to spend my last bullet. The creature walked forward, slow and sure, knowing it now had us trapped between the swamp and the water. My heart pounded so hard it blurred the edges of my sight. "This is it," Marcel said. He fired. I fired. Henri fired. The creature staggered. It let out a sound deeper than anything we had heard before, a guttural release of pain and fury combined. It fell to one knee. Marcel fired again. This time the creature collapsed fully. It lay half in the mud, half in the reeds. Its chest rose and fell in shallow, uneven breaths. Its red eyes dimmed, but did not close. We approached slowly. I kept my rifle trained on its head. Up close, I saw details I had never wanted to see. Thick, coarse fur matted with mud, long limbs built for strength and speed, jaws lined with teeth meant for tearing. It stared at us with something that looked like knowledge, not rage, recognition, as if it knew exactly what it had done, and knew that we understood it. Its breath finally slowed, then stopped. We stood there in silence. Henri sobbed uncontrollably. Marcel lowered his rifle and stared at the creature's still body with an expression I could not read: relief, sorrow, exhaustion, and something else, something like respect. "We leave," he said. "Now, before the swamp decides we paid too small a price." We constructed a small raft using branches and rope from our packs. We pushed into the water and let the current carry us away from the shore. As the trees slowly receded, the swamp's calls resumed around us, as if the world had restarted. We drifted in silence for a long time. When the sun dipped low, Henri finally spoke. "Do we tell them?" he asked. "The mill, the sheriff, everyone?" "Yes," I said. "We tell them what happened. We tell them everything." Marcel shook his head. "They will not believe it." "I do not care," I said. "They need to know that place is not ours. It never was." Marcel looked back toward the fading tree line. "The swamp keeps its own stories," he said, "and it keeps its own debts." We floated onward until the trees thinned completely and the air smelled cleaner. Night settled over the river, calmer than the night before. We were alive, but not whole, not anymore. The swamp had taken Baptiste, it had taken Harlan, it had taken Isaac. We escaped with the truth, but the truth carried a weight none of us would ever put down. When the lights of a riverside settlement finally appeared ahead, Henri broke into quiet tears. Marcel exhaled slowly. I felt something in my chest loosen for the first time since we arrived in that swamp. But even as relief washed over me, I knew the creature's final howl would stay in my mind forever. A warning, a promise, and the last voice of the swamp that had allowed only a few of us to leave alive.